welcome to the end of week 2. It is Sunday, so we're a little over 2 weeks, and this is my second character. So we have not rerolled 15 times. I followed what was more or less my plan, and went straight into this build of Connor Converses, which is the Mjölner Ball Lightning Orbiting Archmage mana stacking. Hierophant? Yeah. It's a remarkably good build. We are still fairly nascent in the scheme of things, so this is my current POB as of last night. We are probably, not quite triple the damage of my previous build, my starter build, as we're at around 20 mil, if all goes exceptionally well. I'm a little uncertain that that's actually completely accurate, because I think to get this shock effect I may need to tweak my main links. So we might only be about double, a little over, but assuming this was accurate, which is what Connor calculated, then we're not far off. So yeah, this is a remarkably good build. Started out pretty basic. I forget what I leveled with now. Oh yes, I leveled with one with nothing, and unarmed slammed my way with that to get to the Atlas. So yeah, hollow palm technique, and then just smite basic twink gear, and we went through the Atlas in about 5 hours, which for me is about average. And not playing a right-hand side of the tree build, so there's a lot of movement speed and so forth I can't pick up, and mostly the enemy for me when leveling alts is the movement speed. We swapped to Connor's cheap POB, the sort of the One Divine version, as soon as we could, which I think is pretty much Mjölner and Shaper's Touch, and that was about 1 million damage with a 6 link, with a 5 link I think even. And so that was fine, and then we've been gradually buying the bits. I think Cyclopean Coil was probably next. We've done a bunch of upgrades. This is the Astromentis I actually leveled with, because when you're leveling with Hollow Palm, you need a ton of dexterity. So I picked up an Astromentis for that, and I've actually kept it, because even the upgrade amulet is not really going to improve my damage. It would give me some extra stats maybe, but it's not super DPS worth it at the moment. So yeah, I mean, the idea of the build is very straightforward. Connor explains it better than I do, but pretty much you Cyclone around. Your Cyclone has a cast while channeling link to Shock Nova, in this case. Connor uses Lightning Warp. I do not get on with Lightning Warp. It's very speedy. You certainly fly around the map, but I found it, even though it actually has a sort of hidden defensive benefit, because you're not really in one place long enough to get hit, I didn't really like the style. It's just a bit too jerky for long periods of play. So I went for the Shock Nova version, which is higher damage anyway, and just helps us inflict shock generally. But that isn't really your main damage, that's a tiny percentage. What's actually causing the damage is Mjölner, which is casting Ball Lightning of Orbiting on a very regular basis, just whenever we hit things at all, and we hit things a lot as Cyclone, like many times a second. So the ball lightning, the balls sort of fly out as we hit monsters and circle us. And they use Archmage, which means we get lots of extra damage based on our mana. And we're also running Indigon, which means that as we spend mana, we gain ridiculous quantities of damage. And we use Arcane Cloak as a trigger for that, which spends a bunch of your mana instantly, gives you a bit of protection, but it's mostly the spend we look for. And then we just arrange things so that we can sustain that mana usage even when it's high, and everything dies really nicely. So that's pretty much the principle of the build. And then the gear is, mostly Shaper's Touch is giving us some useful bits and pieces, making it easier for us to hit things, because we're stacking intelligence. So this kind of gets us a lot of evasion and accuracy, which is pretty nice. And yeah, it gives us melee fizz, which doesn't help an awful lot but it gives us energy shield as well. We need to have a lot of strength as well to wield Mjölner. We need the int, but that's easy. Yeah, we're getting ailment immunity and some extra attributes from this belt. We don't get freeze immunity from there because our dex is not higher than our intelligence. So we get freeze and chill immunity from Pantheon, but we get ignite immunity and shock immunity just because of the stat balance we've got. So that's pretty nice. Ivory Tower is pretty handy, so that's actually allows you, presumably you've got enough energy shield, and you actually get extra energy shield regen from there. We're getting ES from our strength anyway, and obviously get ES from intelligence, which we're stacking for mana anyway, so you end up with a lot of ES. If you reserve mana, this is going to give you extra energy shield, which is great, and that means that we can run a Prism Guardian, and the Prism Guardian gives us better reservation and causes things to reserve life, so we stick a bunch of offensive and defensive auras in there, which get buffed anyway with plus to aura gems, and meaning that we're pretty defensive, and we do extra damage, so that's pretty nice. And they also stop, and chaos damage would be a problem otherwise, because chaos damage by default bypasses energy shield, and we have no life, so a single bit of chaos damage would kill us. Ivory Tower says chaos damage comes out of mana before life, and we have a lot of mana, except when we've spent it all. To protect us when we've spent it all, we also run a coruscating elixir, which has chaos damage not bypass energy shield, and the elixir lasts, as you can see from it ticking down, a lot longer. So we pretty much always have coruscating up, assuming that we're continuing to press Arcane Cloak. And then we have a bunch of extra res and bits and pieces from extra flasks that are also triggered when we use a guard skill, which Arcane Cloak is, so that's how we spend our flasks. And yeah, we got bleed immunity from a flask here. This was just a patch I did because bleed was irritating me, and it's just auto use. If I get corrupted blood, I'll hit the flask by hand. Yeah, most of the rest of the gear is pretty much attributes and mana, stuff like that. Fairly straightforward. Yeah, so for most of the first week of playing this build, so most of last week, week 2, it's been good. You know, the damage has been pretty much on par with the previous build, but it was a lot tankier. And just gradual upgrades have helped to improve things a bit. In the last 24-48 hours, I have done a bunch more upgrades. So I did upgrade the Indigon because I started out with you want the lowest cost of skill possible here to pair with Inspiration, as it turns out. So yeah, we did that, but I had a lousy increased spell damage per 200 mana spent roll. I had the min roll, so I swapped that out for a good one, which cost a lot more, but it's well worth it. We've actually got quality on our Instrumentis now, which is something, these rings are the things I rolled when I switched into the build. They are very basic, but they're fine, actually, and none of the stats are really wasted. They just could be a lot better. So I could swap them out for Cogwork rings, but the damage difference isn't huge. It's mostly if I need to fix something, job. And they'd improve accuracy, which might help us get rid of this. We could do with getting rid of this, but it has helped. So yeah, rings are basic, that's basic, that's basic. These I re-rolled yesterday. They were quite expensive, mostly just to get the implicit roll. So the 9% CDR and 4% action speed are kind of necessary for the next breakpoint for us to get a significant damage upgrade, which we now have. That is a double Orb of Conflict on an Eater of World's implicit mod, already rolled with, I think, Grand Ichors. You know, you have to pump that up very high. And I also wanted to Fracture Chaos Res. I was slightly dumb when creating this. I had planned to imprint. So I started off with a blank item, and I thought, okay, we'll start with the implicits, and then we'll deal with the item. I had planned to use Krakit Chimerals to imprint the magic item, which effectively lets you roll back to a previous version, because the odds of those Orb of Conflicts, the first one is slightly better than 50-50, but the second hit I had to do to get 9% is 50-50, dead on. So yeah, So we did actually, that was the plan. Unfortunately, you can't actually use these Cricket Chimerals on a fractured item, so that was my mistake. I should resell these, but I might use them on rings or something. So we just had to YOLO it, and we got lucky, hit it first time with 2 Orbs of Conflict, which is a couple of Divines at the moment. So we got the Implicits done, and then it's just a spam with... what do we spam with? Strength Essences, until we hit top tier intelligence. So we got max roll of top tier 1 intelligence, which I was really pleased with. So suffixes are perfect, and then we did a cheap suffixes cannot be changed with a wild bristle matron, and smacked it with a Veil Chaos Orb. It's about 15C, came out with a decent movement speed roll for us, and the worst possible tier of other perfect mods. So the worst mana roll imaginable, and it could be 20 instead of 23, but it's pretty much the worst imaginable, and the worst increase to armor and ES, as they kind of mineraled at tier 4. So we could redo the prefixes there. I could just use this Wild Bristle Matron and get another Veiled Orb and have another go, but I don't think I'm going to do that yet, because I do like that movement speed roll. It has high rolled in the range, and it does give me extra move speed when I'm just moving between dead monster packs because of the increased if not hit. So I like that. So I'm not going to swap that out until we go to Squire, which will be the next major upgrade. But yeah, so they were somewhat expensive to create. Possibly the most expensive thing I have. Once we got that increased cooldown recovery rate, that increases the rate at which Mjölner can fire, so then you need to increase your attack speed to reach the right breakpoint, which Path of Building can actually tell you all this stuff. I mean, you can actually go to PoB and it will tell you your trigger rate, and we can actually go in here and we can see the trigger rate and the trigger rate cap. So you can see here my trigger rate cap that I need to reach, or close to, is 4.33 times per second, but you can't go over because Path of Exile. It's all to do with server ticks, how many times the server cycles per second, and other tedious details. But yeah, so we pushed that up to 4.31, which is so fast, we're so close that if I get 1% more attack speed, I lose damage. So we are pretty perfect on that. And to do that, we had to get 20% more attack speed, which we did by getting a Shaper's Touch with a 10% corruption, which was cheap as anything. I wanted a Mjölnir with a corruption on that. That's what Connor had recommended in his build guide, but they don't exist, so that's a small issue. So instead, we swapped out one of our jewels somewhere. I think maybe this one. Yes. So we wanted exactly 10, not 11, but 10 increased attack speed. And we needed to fix some res. So I had to get all res. All my other jewels, I couldn't get the all res Connor had recommended. I could only get dual res to get decent jewels at a reasonable price. But we had to have an all res after putting those boots on. So yeah, we ended up with this, which is fine. And I just wanted a non-dead mod, and Flask Effect Duration is very nice. That's like an extra second on coruscating, which is nice. So yeah, and once we got those, we're in pretty good shape, as our now attack speed is exactly at this breakpoint, and that's probably the highest breakpoint we can reasonably reach. So very happy with that. Yeah, so that's most of the upgrades I've done. There is one other change I made, which is a feature of this league, which is ridiculous, if you ask me, but it's so good I had to take advantage of it. We are using lightning skills, so that's a lightning skill, and that's a lightning skill, and that was the plan anyway.
Go on, out with it.
But it turns out that because we have mercenaries this league, and you can equip mercenaries, we can get ridiculous benefits like making all of our lightning damage lucky, which is obviously very nice with lightning damage, because lightning damage has a big range normally. Like 27 to 511 is a pretty big range. Yeah, so you run a perk quills and so forth, and this merc is not properly geared. I've just done a basic job. We got a small damage increase from this. These are just resist rings plus a little extra. The little extra is that everyone and you can run Doryani's prototype on your mercenary, which is something that you normally couldn't do because you'd have to run it yourself. But now we can have an extra body armor slot, provided it has enemy effects, not self effects. Obviously, its mods won't affect us unless they say allies. But yeah, so this armor changes nearby enemies' lightning resistance to be equal to the Mercenaries. And then we can equip these mirrored rings, these Calandra rings, and these are cheap versions. So these are only 1 or 2 divines each. And so that's minus 64 lightning res and minus 63. We've also taken all the lightning res off our other gear, which means our Merc has minus 123% lightning resistance, which means that our enemies have minus 123% lightning resistance. Now the negative cap on lightning res is minus 200, because you can go very much into the negative. We were running lightning pen on here, but we're certainly running lightning pen on here, and I think we could swap this quite reasonably to awaken lightning pen. So yeah, enemies take really quite a lot of damage, and this isn't accounted for in the POB, but I can make it account for it. So if we actually take our 19 million current damage and we add the mods from Doryani's with lightning resistance equal to yours, obviously it's actually our Merc that's being affected, but POB doesn't understand Merc, so we can just do it to ours. It'll screw our defenses, but we're only looking for the damage effect as a simulation. So we can do minus 200 to lightning resistance. That drops our lightning res to minus 118, and that takes our DPS up to nearly 50 million, which is what we have currently, which is insane. It's insane, and it is that good. It is that good. I've been killing pinnacle bosses like Sirus is, what, a couple of seconds?
I am alive.
A swift end.
It's crazy. Yeah, obviously I don't have that on the POB all the time. But yeah, 50 million deeps. So we could run Ubers, I suspect, quite happily. Our defenses are quite good. I have run a tier 17. Mostly just to get the 6th map device slot, and I did bisect that tier 17 because we did it before these upgrades, but I think we could run, if we were picky with the mods, we could run tier 17s. I do hate tier 17, so I'm not largely going to do that, but we could, and it means I would quite like to try this out against some Ubers, but that is very expensive because the Uber fragments...
Hello.
Like the Uber fragments this league, they are crazy prices. I mean, you're looking at, I think Maven's usually the most expensive. Let's say we had Chaos. Yeah, 166 for that fragment. Yeah, they're all pretty tasty in terms of cost, and you need 6 of them. So yeah, so there's that. So we can do that. But we're not really done with upgrades yet. So the next logical upgrade for me would be to switch to a Squire. Now the Squire is pretty great. The Squire is a shield which has 3 sockets, and socketed support gems also support skills from your main hand, because currently our main damaging skill that does insane damage is on a 3-link. Now if we equip a Squire, we get a 6-link. If you do the maths, which I have, and POB has, effectively we trade away about 1/3 of our defenses in order to triple our damage. Now that's triple before we start thinking about, so that's triple the whatever this is, 20 mil. So that takes us up. It's pretty high. It's pretty large. Let's call it 50 mil. Let's say it's not triple. It's large. With this mod, that would take our actual damage with the mercenary lightning res mod up to about 100 million. And this is not like the most expensive version of this build. There isn't like a mirror in this build. There's probably I'm on the like 50 to 70 divine version. Squire is really cheap this league. It's as it was the last couple of leagues. So yeah, that would be an insane damage boost, especially this league. I mean, going up to 50 mil without the Merc is crazy. And yeah, so we may do that, but we would lose a third of our defenses because we would lose this nice extra reservation on our triple auras. So we would have to drop Flesh and Stone, and we'd have to drop Zealotry, which is damage, and Consecrated Ground, which is quite nice. We would keep Wrath, but we would put Wrath under Arrogance, so we'd stick it in the helmet. So we're still running that. And so that would reserve our life. We couldn't get all the way down on life. We might need an Enlighten. In fact, we would need an Enlighten level 2, which we could slot in here. We drop the Clarity, which isn't really doing much for us anyway. So we do that, and then I think we keep Grace, or we keep Zealotry. We do something as an Eternal Blessing so that we've got it on our mana. But we're going to lose a bunch of defenses. No we don't. We drop all those. Instead, as our Eternal Blessing, we run Purity of Elements, because we're going to lose a bunch of resistances, which will be bad. So we run Purity of Elements, which also gives us Ailment Immunity, which means we don't need most of these belts mods anymore, as soon as we've got Ailment Immunity. And then we don't need Brine King, so we can switch to a better damage reduction Pantheon, and drop this belt, recraft it with percent attributes as a rare, get a bunch of extra stats on it. It ain't going to do huge things for our defensiveness. I still think it's going to be less defensive than this. But yeah, so pretty much drop auras, insert Squire, get Purity, swap Wrath over to Arrogance, get an Enlighten, throw away Clarity, recraft Belt, and then maybe we need to recraft Rings. Maybe we want to, maybe we need to try and get some defenses back, though that's not going to do much for defenses. Yeah, so we do that, and I don't think at that point it's still going to be worth switching to an Eyes of the Great Wolf. It would have to be a particularly good one. We'd kind of need to really start stepping up the gear even harder, I think, to make that worth it. We'd certainly have to recraft these rings before a Great Wolf. But just, in any case, just the shield swap and the rearrangements, even if I didn't recraft the belt, even if I just left it there, the damage goes up by an insane amount. But it will cost us defenses. So I'm in two minds. Because I think compared to a lot of builds of this variety, we're not as tanky as we could be. We're still sub 10k ES. And whilst we currently have 50% evasion, we would lose that because we're dropping Grace. We have some block, but we have no spell suppression. We're not using Mana Before Life except with Chaos damage, so we're not using Mind Over Matter because we want to spend our mana, not have it disappear due to getting hit. So we could be tankier. And that's probably the only reason I'm not switching to Squire at the moment. Plus, I currently don't have a use case where I need 100 million DPS. Currently. I'm sure there's something I'll want to run where that would be useful. But currently, 40 mil, thanks to the minion, is fine. Or 50 mil. 50 mil is acceptable. In another league, I would probably make the swap right now, because this damage in maps is just pleasing. I mean, it's just face roll. It is exceptionally just good. I don't know if we can demo this. I don't know if I actually have do I have an Exarch or something I can demo this on? Let's see. Yeah, we do. Okay, so let's do what I never do and actually pump this up a bit. Okay, that's going to be really difficult. So that might kill us. Does it have a reflect? No. Okay, well, we're going to have to take all that stuff out for a second. Yeah, let's just run this. And we'll bring the Merc.
Your absurd defiance ends here, hatchling.
Right, last fire.
Incineration.
Must have time to travel.
Defiance of 1,000 suns.
Okay, so he's going to get at least one fires off.
Terror strength, hatchling.
That may
I
be.
suck at this memory game.
No, I
I'm
want
not
the
falling
Atlas.
back to
It's
town.
Memory
mine.
game.
Pathetic.
It's in the spirit of memory game. It's not actually a memory game, of course. Should really have stayed there. That would have been smarter.
Challenging for this realm.
So yeah, damage is quite good. You know, that's only ordinary Exarch. There isn't an Uber, you know, because we haven't gone crazy. If we do this, take the Squire route, we can probably do that to Ubers, I guess. I don't know. But we're getting up to the level of damage. This is a level of damage I haven't seen since Exploding Totems. This is the. Is it already the highest damage build? I think it's probably joint with this ridiculous mod, because I think the highest damage I had was something like 45 mil. Aside from Exploding Totems, I think it was the 45 mil that I had on my Splitting Steel champion, which was a ridiculous number of Divines build. Probably double this, I think, in investment. But yeah, that was a good build. This, thanks to the ridiculous mods, is kind of reaching parity with that, and with the Squire would have legitimate parity with that, whilst being a bit less tanky. And of course, if we improve a bunch of this gear, we can take the stats further and get some more defensiveness and so forth. And there's a bunch of things we haven't done on the passive tree. I mean, we've done a bunch of the core bits and pieces, so yeah, we are applying getting spell damage on low life and spell damage that way. We're running these split personalities, which are moderately expensive, which is why there's this orange highlight, because they add more and more attributes the further this path is from the start location, hence this protracted path that Connor's mapped out, which I've followed. But most of the actual stats we're getting are mana. Even these life are mana, thanks to this jewel, or intelligence. As in this case, we've got a couple of semi-expensive clusters. Yeah, could be better. They don't have ridiculous added small passive mods, so these are only a few divines each, rather than insane amounts of divines each. And all the jewels are cheap versions, so they're not all res, and some of them are 8/8 rather than 10/10, because those get really expensive and they're actually pretty hard to come by, and they're only 3 modules in many cases. Yeah, but they're not bad. So it's not bad, but we are really passive starved. I am thinking, in order to actually get the shock effect that I should have, because it is possible the damage I have at the moment is not lining up with Connor's predicted shock effect, I might need to drop this accuracy, which will lower the hit rate, which will decrease our overall DPS, but not by a huge amount, because we're already at 98%, so this is kind of an overkill way of getting there. If I drop the accuracy, find some other solution to that, then we can go shock effect, and then I can pick up the shock passives in here. This is a really lovely ailment cluster with, and there's this ridiculous mod, increase in reductions to maximum mana also apply to shock effect. I think if we pick these up, which is 4 points, which I will need to suck out of, elsewhere, that could be pretty huge. That will actually legit give us shocks. I'm not actually sure what our pinnacle shock is. I'm guessing probably we got as far as like 14-20% in the boss we just did. I don't think it's that great. So one could argue that our damage is not as impressive at all. Like if that's legit, and we were only at like 18% shock, it's only 39 mil. So pretty paltry. If it was only 12% shock, it's only 37 mil. So yeah, plus or minus 10 mil, but yeah, it's still crazy. So yeah, really enjoying this. Next upgrade is likely Squire. Probably will do that, at least just to try it out. Currently, I'm just having fun today. So yeah, we've completed the new mission chains and so forth, hence this rather strange looking atlas. But yeah, so I'm currently just enjoying a bit of ritual and boss farming, which is good for me. I need to complete some rituals for the challenges anyway, for this league's challenges, because I want the armor set. And I don't normally do ritual, so I'm just playing around with some ritual, which is good. I'm killing bosses instantly, which is nice. Cruising around, nothing's doing me any damage. Everything dies instantly. Generally enjoyable. We might try some more T17s. We might move to a slightly heavier farming strategy. In the last week, I have been running a lot of Breach. That's actually how I made most of my money, is just farming up these Breach stones. And yeah, that's actually been good. Breach has been decent money. It's only a 2 div an hour, 2.5 div an hour, something like that. A little bit more than that, the way I run them. If you're MP and you can run twice the maps that I run at twice the speed, then with twice the efficiency rather, then yeah, it's like 10 div. But I'm getting a steady 2.5 without any particular hard work, just cruising around breaches, destroying everything. It's very nice. Yeah, and we could improve our Merc further.
Well,
I mean, this is
what will it be then?
This is pretty basic. I've sort of set her up because she can only deal lightning damage now, so I've just set her up with the most trivial, minimal contribution to events, and yeah, to make her relatively useful. I would like an Asenath's Gentle Touch for her. I was going to buy one, but I can't quite be bothered to spend the money. I'm sure one will drop. We've got quite a lot of other uniques so far, and they're not that rare. So yeah. Also, doing ritual has been paying off so far. I've only run about 4 ritual maps, but out of the second map ritual, I got a divine, which is pretty nice. I did have to defer it in the ritual tribute window for a few maps until I could actually buy it. And then for a very tiny amount of tribute, we picked up a level 83 bone ring with fractured tier 1 minion damage that I just sold for 18 divines, which I think is the highest trade value on a rare item that I have ever done. So I went from having 0 divines this morning to having 20. So ritual's paying off. Yeah, pretty good. I am definitely checking every fracture in rituals from now on. Obviously hoping for a Mage Blood card. That would be ideal. There is a bit of me that is very tempted. I've never done this, but we're already 10% of the way there. I'm very tempted to try and save up for a Mage Blood, because I've never bothered. But this build is powerful enough to run the sort of content that can net us multiple divines per hour, even at my pace. I might think about doing it. The league hasn't been going on that long. It's only 2 weeks. So I might have enough in me to get a Mage Blood. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. That is a long way ahead. If Ritual keeps delivering, then maybe. But yeah, because they're currently, 200 and something divines, I think? And they're going to go up to 300. So by the time I get there, yeah, they're at 222 and they're on the rise. So that's going to be like 280 easily. I mean, if we look at Settlers. Oh, okay, they actually dropped off after a while in Settlers. Yeah, so they peaked. But, yeah, it's this peak. Mind you, if it takes a while to get there, they might be really cheap. Anyway, yeah, so we might do that. We might do that. That's about it for week 2. Still enjoying the league. Very pleasant. Yeah, having fun. gonna go do some more rituals, kill some more bosses, maybe do some high tier content, try and make some money. Yeah, all good. That's it for now. Until next time, farewell.